They built it. Not the mosques, you understand? Any man with petrodollars can pour concrete and call it a house of God. They built the grammar, the syntax of belief, the infrastructure through which a boy in Maiduguri, or a girl in Sarajevo, or a convert in Ann Arbor, Michigan, learns to pass the world. They gave them the categories: Tawhid, Bidah, Salaf, Manhaj. They gave them the lens, and through the lens, everything resolves into clarity, into us and them. And I tell you, that clarity is not a gift. Let me tell you what your average liberal or a salon leftist does not understand. When they say imperialism, they mean territory. They mean boots on the ground and flags on the map and old European game. Of course, always and only European, white European game of carving the world into slices. Holes! I read Foucault and Gramsci. I read the leftist idols, and I laughed. Because they described what Saudis were already doing, creating the epistemic empire, the regime of truth. The Saudis and the leftists realized they did not need to conquer a single inch of soil, only the mind, the curriculum. That's why they're in your schools. You think the Muslim World League is a charity? The Muslim World League that functions primarily as an international non-governmental Islamic organization engaged in propagating Islamic culture, promoting interfaith dialogue and conducting global humanitarian and relief operations alongside bodies like the UNHCR and UNICEF, though it is officially state-supported rather than a standalone independent charity. You think WAMI is a youth club? The World Assembly of Muslim Youth, an international Islamic educational and humanitarian non-governmental organization, NGO, founded in 1972 and headquartered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. You think the IRO builds orphanages out of the kindness of its heart? The International Organization for Relief, Welfare and Development, formerly known as the International Islamic Relief Organization, a major Saudi-based NGO founded in 1978 by the Muslim World League. It engages in extensive global humanitarian work, including orphan care, social welfare, and disaster relief, while also having faced historic counter-terrorism scrutiny by international governments regarding peripheral funding channels in specific regions. I will tell you what they are. They are nodes, synapses. They are the dendrites of a single vast nervous system whose brain sits in Riyadh and whose fingers reach into 130 nations. And when the fingers twitch, the body moves. Think about it. Think of all the diversity of the Ummah. The Javanese with their Gamelan Islam, the Nigerians with their Sufi drums, the Bosnians with their Hanafi poetry, the Turks with their whirling, the Indians with their shrines. To some, all of this is just noise, accretion, bidah. Some powers that be have incentives to give them the pure word, to unify, to universalize Islam. Consider Bosnia. There was a war. Remember the Serbs? Of course, everyone remembers the Serbs and their shells, their snipers on the hills above Sarajevo picking off people. Civilians, mind you. Well, after the war, there was a vacuum. The Bosniak identity was created, and the Bosniaks were a shattered people. And what will a shattered people do, mind you? Well, they will accept any architecture you offer them. They will take your mosque because they need a roof. And they will take your imam because they need a voice. Yusuf Barčić, remember him? Remember the name? Medina, class of 1992. He returned to Sarajevo with fire in his eyes and the Kitab al-Tawheed in his pocket. Yes, this is how it works. You send a student instead of an army and fire a curriculum instead of bullets. Thankfully, when Barčić died, a car accident in March 2007, they said it was a car accident, his movement fractured. The Quietists went one way, the militants went another. Nusret Imamović went to Syria. 300 Bosnians went to the Caliphate. Almost all Wahhabi-related activities that have taken place in Bosnia lead back to one man, Muhammad Borka. He runs the Vienna-based Islamic Community Administrative Unit and is both the financial and ideological leader of the movement in Bosnia. Barčić was a colleague of Porča's during their studies in Saudi Arabia. For the last decade and a half, Sarajevo-born Porča has served as the Imam of the Al-Tawheed Mosque in Vienna's 12th district. In 2020, the Austrian government closed down the Masjid Tawheed because Quitim Faizulai, a terrorist that killed 4 and wounded 17 people in the center of Vienna, was radicalized there. Consider Indonesia, the largest Muslim nation on earth, and they had the gall to practice an Islam that was theirs. An Islam that smelled of clove and frangipani, that danced. An Islam that let the women lead the prayer and the gamelan play in the courtyard and the wayang puppets tell the stories of the prophets in Javanese. So someone looked at this and said, no, 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 no. This is folklore. Again, accretion, again, bid'ah. So they sent the books and the imams and the scholarships. And they sent Lipia to South Jakarta. Lembaga Ilmu Pengetahuan Islam dan Arab, an Islamic and Arab college in South Jakarta that offers free education and student stipends and an Arabic foundation program. It is funded by Saudi Arabia. And the Javanese Islam began to thin, to pale, to lose its color and music and smell. And in its place, the white thobe, the trimmed beard, the finger raised in Tawheed, the word shirk, and then Bali. 2002, 202 dead. And naive, innocent people, Western people, looked at the rubble and they said, where did this come from? And I will tell you where it came from. It came from their books, and it came from their mosques, and it came from the Pesantren al-Mukmin, also known as Pondok Ngruki. It was co-founded in 1972 by Abu Bakr Ba'asir and Abdullah Sunkar. Analysts and investigative reports note that early networks utilized financial support and donations originating from Saudi Arabia and Gulf-based channels to build and expand conservative religious schools. You don't say. Look at the alumni and the graduates. The teachers, Hambali, Abu Bakr Bashir, Abdul Qadir Baraja, who was an author of Hijrah dan Jihad, arrested in January 1979 in connection with Terror Varman, served 3 years, arrested again in connection with bombings in East Java and Borobudur in 1985. That's a teacher. Abdurrahman Taib, aka Abdurrahim bin Taib, a former teacher who was sentenced to 9 years in prison in February 2009 for aiding and abetting JI military commander Abu Dujana. Among the school graduates are such notables as Amrozi bin Nur Hassim, convicted and sentenced to death, Fadlullah Hassan, Gold that was stolen from a bank and converted to cash was deposited in Hassan's bank account before being used to finance the Bali attack. Fadur Rahman Al-Ghazi, who was killed in Mindanao, Philippines, he was convicted in the December 2000 bombing of a Manila commuter train in which 22 people were murdered. Zulkarnain led an elite militant squad whose members were recruited from hundreds of Indonesians who trained in Afghanistan and the Philippines. Abdullah Rauf, also known as Sam bin Jahrudin, Bali bombing suspect, member of J.I. Cell, reportedly helped make the Bali bombs. Reported as killed fighting in Syria, Aris Munandar, alleged to be a fundraiser and who is still at large. Then Asmar Latin Sani, the suicide bomber in the 2003 Marriott attack. His severed head was later found on the 5th floor of the building. Muhammad Saifuddin met with Osama bin Laden several times in Afghanistan. In 2001, Saifuddin was alleged being groomed as the future Jemaah Islamiyah leader. Muhammad Rais met Osama bin Laden and conveyed bin Laden messages to Abu Bakr Bashir, convicted for storing the explosives used in Marriott hotel bombing. Masrizal bin Ali Umar secured the detonators used in the blast with Azahari Hussein. Nur Hasbi graduated with and was a friend of Asmar Latin Sani. He was one of the suicide bombers in 2009 Marriott attack. The school is still running. It currently houses over 2,000 students aged between 12 and 18. And Nigeria. I will tell you about Nigeria because Nigeria is where this architecture really worked. Abu Bakr Gumi. Remember him? The Grand Qadi. The man, Riyad Maher. They gave him the King Faisal Award in 1988. They gave him the platform, the funding, the legitimacy. And he took their books, the books of Ibn al-Wahhab, the books of Tawheed and purification, and he translated them into Hausa. And the Sufi orders, the Qadiriya and the Tijaniya, the orders that had held the North together for 200 years, began to crack. And then Izala, 1978, Ismaila Idris, their student. And then Jafar Mahmud Alam, their student's student. Medina trained, cassette sermons, radio broadcasts, the word bid'ah on every frequency, the word shirk in every market, the word kafir for the Sufi, for the Christian, for the neighbor who celebrated Mavlid, for the mother who visited the shrine. And then Boko Haram. 2002, Muhammad Yusuf, a student of Jafar Adam, and the Ibn Taymiyyah Mosque in Maiduguri, named for their theologian, their intellectual ancestor, and the sermons against Western education, against the state, against everything that was not the pure word. And then Shekau, and then the girls, and then the bombs, and then the villages, and then the children. Abu Bakr Shekau took charge after the 2009 death of Boko Haram founder Muhammad Yusuf. He turned the sect into brutal insurgency across northeastern Nigeria. They became famous, world famous, after kidnapping 276 female students in Chibok in 2014. Many were eventually released or escaped through years, but some remained missing. He orchestrated devastating vehicle and suicide bombings targeting churches, mosques, bus stations, UN facilities in Nigerian cities, including Abuja and Jos, systematically weaponized captives, coercing or drugging young women and children to carry out suicide bombings in crowded public spaces. True soldier of Allah. And then they say, the useful idiots in the West say, this is not Islam. And I say this is Islam. This is the Islam they built. And this is the Islam of Tawheed taken to its logical conclusion. This is the Islam of purification, when purification meets a world that will not be pure by their standard. And so the world burns. And now, you want me to speak of now, of the caliphate that rose in 2014 and fell in 2019 and did not fall, of the 80,000 fighters who became 3,000, and did not become zero, of the General Directorate of Provinces and the fifth Caliph, whose name no one knows, of East Khorasan in the mountains of Afghanistan, plotting in Kerman, in Moscow, in Solingen, in New Orleans, of the children in Al-Hol camp, 38,000 of them. And I will tell you, Saudi Arabia built the grammar, the categories. They built the lens, and through the lens, the world resolved into us and them, pure and impure. And the lens worked. It worked so well that it broke the world into fragments so small that each fragment believed itself to be the whole. And each fragment took up arms against the others, and each fragment called itself Islam, and each fragment called the others Kufar. So think of that when the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, says Saudi Arabia is returning to moderate Islam. Moderate Islam. Think of Medina in 1979. Think of Medina when the Grand Mufti issued the fatwa on cyber jihad. Think of Medina when they sent the duat to Kosovo, to Bosnia, to Kano. And now he says moderate Islam. Now he says they will destroy the destructive ideas. They will destroy them. They who built them. But hush, stay silent. Drink your coffee. Do not speak of this. For the Mabahith are everywhere, and the presidency of state security is everywhere. So do not speak of the old days. Do not speak of the books. Do not speak of the mosques. Speak only of Neom, a massive multi-billion-dollar high-tech development project in northwestern Saudi Arabia backed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Speak of the World Cup. Speak of the future.